Hello everybody and welcome back to Typical City. I've got 5 players to go through today, all of which could be potential cover for the big man, Erling Haaland. But what constitutes cover for Erling Haaland? What does that look like? What's the criteria? What are we after here as Manchester City fans and the football club? What do we want? Do we want a like-for-like player? A player that can play in that number 9 role that's all about the goals, they live in the penalty area? Or is it the type of player that's got a little bit more versatility to their game, similar to Julian Alvarez, a player that can drop deep, a player that can go out wide, a player that can create the De Bruyne role, the false 9 role? All of those terms that we use now for this potential player, because a like-for-like player isn't going to play if Haaland's fit. If Haaland's fit, Haaland plays. And there's no way we're doing 2 up front, is there? There's no way Pep goes with 2 lumps up front. There's no way there's no world where that exists, where are 2 big number 9s up front, old school football. You know, it doesn't happen. Pep Guardiola is not going to do it. So let's have a look at the players that are linked with Manchester City, as well as a couple I've thrown in as my suggestions to players that could be potential cover for Erling Haaland. But most recently, we've been linked with Jonathan David, a centre-forward who can play as an attacking midfield. So he's got the versatility, the central versatility. He can play through the middle. That's what he's been doing most predominantly for Lille. I've also got stats to go through as well. So I'm going to show you these players, then compare these players and compare them to the likes of Erling Haaland as well. So stick around towards the end of the video as well, because I'm going to actually compare these players and see who comes out on top with the different areas of their game to explore as well. So stick around for that. 24 years old. Jonathan David from Canada. His contract expires in 2025, so I think that's the most interesting aspect to his profile as a player, because the fact that it ends in summer means City can go in and lowball Lille with a little bit here. We're in the driving seat in that negotiation there. Market value of 40 million euros as well. Interesting. Mohammad Kudas from West Ham, most recently linked prior to Jonathan David. He's got a lot more of that versatility. Hasn't played through the middle that much, excuse me, for West Ham. But he can do that. He did it in Ajax. The stats I'm going to show you as well cover his year at Ajax as well. So the stats I'm going to show you from 2022 to current day, to present day. It's going to be interesting to actually compare these players, but he too is 24 years old, same as Jonathan David from Ghana. Contract expires in 2028 though, so that's a player that I think, again, it's going to be large amounts of money. What are West Ham willing to accept and part ways with Kudus coming to a Manchester City or an Arsenal, who are being linked with as well? Do we want to get into a bidding war with Arsenal, with Declan Rice? We saw how that worked out as well. Arsenal were prepared to go over the odds for Declan Rice, and they probably would say that was worth doing in the end, because he's been an integral part to their midfield. Do we want to learn from that lesson and make sure we don't lose out in a bidding war for Kudus? Interesting. We'll have to look and wait and see for that one, whether this is a possibility in January. Again, interesting. The next player, Ademola Lookman. This is one I've thrown in there. Currently doing incredibly well at Atalanta. Plays on the wing, can play through the middle. So he's got that versatility. Probably arguably more versatility than Kudus, and definitely more versatility than Jonathan David, who we've already seen so far. 27 years old, though. That's the downside to this player, is his age. He's the oldest player on this list of players that you're going to look at from Nigeria. His contract expires in 2026, so coming up, he's got a year left beyond the current year he's currently in right now. So 55 million market value. 17 goals to his goal involvements to his name. 12 goals and 5 assists. Ademola has got this season for Atalanta, who are currently top of Serie A. Rodrigo needs no introduction. Who doesn't know Rodrigo? What's crazy is he's still 23. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like he's been around for a decade. He's still only 23. But is he going to get in the side for Real Madrid? I think that's where City can turn the screw a little bit on Real Madrid with the recent addition of Kylian Mbappe. Is Rodrigo going to get in to this Real Madrid starting 11 when everyone's fit? Probably not, which is where Manchester City could come in and offer him some potential or more minutes than he's going to get at Real Madrid. But there's no way we're going to be able to get this player on the cheap. He's got a current market value of 100 million euros. Obviously not one for January. Never in a million years is this going to happen in January. Definitely one for the summer. But still, an amazing player, an amazing prospect. But is he considered that cover for Haaland? Probably a little less so, probably the least so on this list in terms of his actual ability to go into that false 9 role. But still, I see this player more of a winger, but he can do it. He could definitely do it. The final player, I'm throwing this suggestion in here, is Charles de Ketelaere, also from Atalanta. 23 years old, Belgian. He tends to play a little deeper. He's played on the wing this season, played in attacking midfield, and he's also played in that false nine centre forward role for Atalanta this season. His contract expires in 2027. So you're thinking, well, why are you picking him? Well, he's got 19 goal involvements, more than Ademola Lookman, who people keep suggesting should be the cover for Erling Haaland. This guy's got more goal involvements. He's got 19. You know, not as many goals as Ademola. I think it's 10 goals and 9 assists to his name so far this season. And the fact that he's 23, 4 years younger than Ademola Lookman. Is he going to be the cover for Haaland, though? Again, I'm not too sure that's the right term for him, the right way to describe him. To be honest, I see there's more Kevin De Bruyne to this guy, forgetting the fact that he's also Belgium. There's also that connection as well. So young still, with being 23 years old. But yeah, 19 goal involvements, ticking both boxes in the goals and assists column. But let's have a look and compare these players now. So the 6 players, obviously one of them is Erling Haaland himself. Goals per 90 minutes. Obviously, Haaland's going to top the list. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So people who want to sell Erling Haaland, he gets a goal a game. Don't be stupid. He gets a goal a game. That's his average. Right now, yes, not playing well, but who is at Manchester City? You know, you can't blame just Haaland for that. You know, got to get this chance. We've got to create chances for this man. You know, 1 goal per game. That's his stats. Stupendous from Erling Haaland. It's ridiculous. Right behind him, though, hot on his heels, Jonathan David. So there's your like for like. I do think this is the player that's more closer to the mould of what Erling Haaland actually is. And De Ketelaere, in terms of goals, is the lowest on this list in terms of per 90 minutes. But don't forget, this is actually going over 3 years. Ketelaere is harshly done by here because actually that 3 years ago, he wasn't playing much football at all. He only just came into the Atalanta team the season before and this season. So he's only really got 2 seasons to actually go off, and this is going off the season before that, from 2022 all the way to present day. That's what these stats are looking at, and they're all going to be per 90 minutes as well to make it as fair as possible. Assists. Ademola Lookman shoots to the top of this list, but De Ketelaere also second on that list in terms of creation. So this is your assists, and this is your creation. As you can see, Haaland plummets to the bottom, and David not far behind him either. So again, that's the typical number 9 numbers that you expect to see. Pass completion, very basic stuff here. I'm going to get into more detailed stuff in a second. But yeah, pass completion, you can see Rodrigo maintains the ball really well. But Jonathan David, by the way, as an out-and-out number 9 to maintain 81.9 possession, considering the position on the pitch that he plays, is really, really good. Very, very good to be surrounded by centre-backs and you're still passing the ball around with a high percentage like that. Very, very good. Kudus just behind him. Again, Haaland plummets to the bottom in that regard. So just showcasing that Haaland is a very one-dimensional player, but if you complement that dimension, he's almost unstoppable. But we've got to complement that dimension, and we're not doing it. We're not providing him anything this season. Right, now on to shot-creating actions per 90 minutes. Ademola Lookman tops the list pretty comfortably, in fairness. But again, it's just another indication of the roles that they are currently playing right now. In the attacking third, Ademola Lookman is hands down the best creator for shots in this list of players. You can see Mohammad Kudas is third from bottom, which I'm surprised at, but again, that could be a reflection of the side that he's in, being West Ham's side. Jonathan David and Erling Haaland, not the shot creators, more the shot takers out of this list. So Ademola Lookman is definitely someone that you want to look at in terms of shot creation side of things. Moving on, passes into the final third. Again, this is an indication of where the player plays on the pitch more than anything. De Ketelaere is a lot deeper than the rest of the players on this pitch, so he's passing the ball into the final third, whereas Haaland, you'd expect him to be at the bottom of this list because he's already in the final third in most scenarios. The same for Jonathan David, who's but again shows a versatility to drop deeper, because the difference between Jonathan David and Haaland is huge, really big, whereas the gaps between the rest of the players isn't that big. Obviously, De Ketelaere to Jonathan David is 1 per game, basically, but it plummets a further 1 between David and Haaland. So it's big. It's a big gap, that. So David does have more versatile options to his game than Haaland does. Even though he's still the closest player to a like for like, he could still do that role, having played in attacking midfield so far this season for Lille already. Moving on to crosses now. To actually, the reason I've thrown this in, because I saw a lot of people complaining at the idea that I didn't say that Mohammad Kudas can play through the middle. I know he can play through the middle, but he's predominantly played on the wing. So we're going to talk about what he does do. You know, the fact that he can do it, and he did it in an Ajax shot. Yeah, he can play it, but you can see crosses per 90 minutes. Kudus being second on that list. The reason Lookman is top of that list is because he's the main corner taker for Atalanta. And the reason why Kudus doesn't actually take the corner, so the fact that he's 2.54 and he doesn't even take the corners, as you can see, Lookman, in terms of corner kicks per 90 minutes, Lookman takes 2.2 corners every game, whereas Kudus takes 0.07. Haaland takes 0.01. Does anyone, when was that? Where was the headline news? Erling Haaland takes a corner for Manchester City. When? It must have been that derby, man. It must have been that Manchester derby where we were just keeping the ball down by the corner flag and winding up United just by winding down the clock, by kept taking corners after corner and just holding it there in the position, then kicking it off the United play. That was a genius moment. I missed that City, man. That was so good. That's got to be the 0.01. Anyway, David hasn't taken a corner for 3 years, so he's never going to be taking the corners for Manchester City. But yeah, as you can see, Kudus, he crosses the ball a lot, an indication that he plays out wide more than anyone else on this list. Successful take-ons, again, a real indication of how the players play, where they play. That is the hallmarks of a winger for me. Someone who's more suited to playing out wide than through the middle, with take-on numbers like that for Mohammad Kudas. 4.39 successful take-ons per 90 minutes. Nearly 5 over 4 per game. That's insane. That's insane. The number one dribbler in the Premier League behind Jeremy Doku last season. You know, so you put Kudas on one side, Doku on the other, you know. Exciting times in terms of dribbling ability, but this isn't the video. We're talking about Erling Haaland. Can you cover for Erling Haaland? That's the debate here. But as you can see, yeah, Kudus and Rodrigo top of the list. Interceptions and tackles now. I wanted to look at the defensive side of the game, really, now, because as much as these players are attacking players, we totally neglect what they offer in a defensive attribute, and the fact that these players are so important in terms of what they can offer defensively. What we go back to the first time we ever saw Pep Guardiola as a manager, going back to the Barcelona days, how quickly they got the ball back, what is now known as the counter press. You know, back then it was like, oh, they just get the ball back quickly. That's what it was known as back then. Now it's got a name. It's called the counter press, winning the ball back quickly. Who's going to deliver that out of this list? Because Haaland's the bottom of this list. Rodrigo, second from bottom, but Mohammad Kudas, top. So his defensive attributes are fantastic. Interceptions and tackles per 90 minutes, over 2 a game. Really, really good defensive numbers. That will help City prevent the transition. It will stop the counter-attack more often if you've got more players that win the ball back in the attacking third, you know, and do it aggressively, like Mohammad Kudas does. De Ketelaere, his numbers being what they are, probably indicates the fact that he's more of a central player, less of a number 9. It's really difficult. Again, ball recoveries, sticking with the defensive side of their game. Kudus 6.24 per game, fantastic numbers, defensive attributes. So a real indication as to why City are looking at Mohammad Kudas is that ability to win the ball back and prevent counter-attacks, to prevent these transitions. Winning the ball back early is essential. Who? That's the final stats I wanted to show you, but who? Because obviously you go back to the goals, for example. So having a quick reminder of the goals, Haaland and David top, okay? The number 2 goal scorers on this list. In terms of assists, you've got Lookman and De Ketelaere top of that list. So it's, what do you want as a blend? Kudus drops quite heavily in that list. One thing I will say for Mohammad Kudas in his defence in this is you look at David, who's at Lille, 4th in Ligue 1 right now, with PSG walking away from it. They're 3 points away from second. Atalanta currently top of Serie A. Real Madrid, second, very much in a title race. Manchester City are out of the title race, but we're not comparing the other 5, looking at the other 5 players. Kudus is in a West Ham side, so I think that needs to be factored in. The fact that he's in an average West Ham side, that form-wise, they're not playing well at all this season. So throwing that caveat into the Kudus side of things is a real indication that there's potential for him to blossom more in a side like Manchester City, especially when we start hitting a vein of form that's better than the form we're in right now. He could shine better and brighter in a Manchester City side, but you could apply that same logic to all of the other players, but they are playing in title-chasing sides, or at least in the top 4, the rest of these players. So I do think it's a case of what do you want? It's preference. There's no real definitive answer here. It's preference. Do you want that like for like? If that's the case, then Jonathan David seems to be the man because he gets the goals. He's the player that plays right through the middle. He's the closest like for like to Erling Haaland that there is right now. But a sprinkle of versatility in there because he can drop into attacking midfield as he has done this season. Versatility-wise, I think Lookman's got fantastic numbers throughout this. The problem for him is his age. I feel like the fact that he's 27, the rest of them being so young, You're still getting good years out of him, don't get me wrong, but he is the oldest player on this list. De Ketelaere, I think he's the least closest to Erling Haaland on this list, more into midfield. And then you've got Rodrigo. I think, there's no introduction needed for Rodrigo. You know the versatility. He can play all those roles across the front, any positions you can think of in the final third of the pitch. Mohammad Kudas is an interesting one because I think that the shining aspect to his game is actually the defensive attributes, the ability to prevent counterattacks, his dribbling ability. But I would say that places him out wide. I don't see him as a central player. He could do it. He could absolutely do it. He's got moments of brilliance, as we saw with that overhead kick in our title-winning game of the final game of last season when he scored that overhead kick to make it 2-1. Fantastic moment. He's a brilliant, brilliant player. I'm not sure he should be considered the Erling Haaland cover, though, which is why I think, like for like, if that's what you want, David's your man. And in terms of the overall versatility, I'd probably say Lookman. Ademola Lookman is the closest player to like for like. But the age, it needs to be factored in. What do you think, Blues? I've provided as much information as I could possibly find for these 5 players that I believe could all do a very good job of covering for Erling Haaland whilst also offering a different role to their game. What do you think, Blues? Get in the comments below. Let us know your thoughts. Like and subscribe to Typical City, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City now, holding up silver.